we also celebrate pair as an individual, as Jeff said. And I have had pair Kodak moments all my career working with him. One of the things that hit me very, very early is that the leadership qualities of pair is something that we all admire, of course. At IFPRI, we used to watch him very carefully. How is he handling situations? Not only the academic situations, but also with the donors, with the NGOs, with the private sector. And that is something that we look forward to and learn. But outline of this speech is, this is something that I learned from PER. So in the early days of IFPRI, when PER came, we used to write on plastic sheets, if you remember, and then put it on. There was no PowerPoint in those days. Our handwriting, people could not even see. So first thing he emphasized at IFPRI was policy communication. How do you communicate what you do as research to the policymakers? A lot of lessons we learned collectively. With this help, we started a Toastmasters Club, imagine, at IFPRI. How to speak in the public, the basic public speaking. And Per was a member. He would come every month for the meeting. And that's how we built the capacity of the people to communicate better. And this is, I learned from Per. He would present the outline first. And then he says, I will say what I want to say, and then I will say what it is, and then I will finish it what I have said already. So this is something that we learned. And I want to kind of give that anecdotal kind of evidences as we go along this presentation. Introduction, motivation, I already told, the policy-driven, evidence-driven decision-making. And that is a serious issue. That's what we were struggling with it in CFNPP. How do we, David San was dealing with the macro kind of issues, and some of us were dealing with this micro and sectoral kind of issues. And how the policies are made. What are the human costs of making wrong policies? Policies made without information. How do we understand research is passed on in terms of information that we generate and how the policies are made? That also helped us to understand the policy process. Even in those days, we were worried about the policy process within the country level. Now it's a serious issue. When we want to make impact with agricultural research, we worry about how policies are made. Let's go understand policy process. But that was a real issue in those days as well. And not to mention the political economy of policymaking. Per had a book already at that time on political economy of food policymaking. And how do we understand political economy in the context of policy process? Do they differ in the context of China and Vietnam compared to Malawi and Zimbabwe? How much democratization of the policymaking process or the political processes help in enhancing the policy process itself in using information and the existing capacity to make changes? And then, of course, strengthening the institution comes. That's this Honorable Kangode's comment on strengthening institutions to generate evidence. And recently, we are seeing IFPRI has been, with Joachim's leadership, involved in CADAP process. And when you look at that, it is all policy making, collective action at the country level. Countries taking leadership, sitting in the driver's seat and saying, we want to do this, and that means we need capacity. And that is how the capacity-driven, policy-driven, evidence-driven, knowledge-driven policy-making has been an integral part of what we do at IFPRI in addition to the research programs. Now the food crisis came along. Very good opportunity to think about who makes policies in a kind of crisis situation, right? And that's something that I want to talk about in the context of what we have been doing in the last 20 years. The 10 years before that was basically Cornell's accumulated knowledge and Cornell Nutritional Surveillance Program that I learned after coming to Cornell. So historical background, I wouldn't dwell on this too much, but there is a lot of people, there are a lot of people who have worked on these issues. It's not just that information is important, we realize that now, but people have been, Cornell has been a forerunner in that. And it trained PhD students in multidisciplinary manner in those early 90s. And all of them are doing very well in high-level positions. Eric Thorbeck is here and Per and their leadership and training people in those days. But more importantly, there is an evolution of starting with nutritional pressure to monitor and to go beyond nutrition to social indicators and to food security indicators, early warning systems came about. And then nutritionists didn't trust the economists, and they go back to nutritional surveillance. Now sentinel surveillance are going on in UNICEF. And there is, again, a divide in the disciplinary manner in which we work, which is a sad thing. And at the national level, I will show you in some slides that nutrition is working separately from the policy analysts and policy researchers. It's something that we need to work again, and work has to be done to bring them back together. If at all, one message I'm going to send during this presentation is that we are in a critical stage where multidisciplinary research and action is much more critical that PEAR started a long time ago. And evolution of various monitoring systems have been happening, but this is fundamental. This is basically from rewording of various approaches to food security and nutrition monitoring and the purposes for which they are developed. You can talk about the program management and evaluation as an approach to collect information, plan, and then execute. Most of the NGOs are engaged in it, and in some governments do. Development planning and policy making, this is something that we talked about. The CADAP approach is a classic example of how to collect information, organize it, and then use it in the monitoring system to track the changes that are happening from the CADAP policies and programs. Early warning system, of course, it's a global, and early warning systems are there. National early warning systems that's addressing the weather-related information along with the food security information. Problem identification, the food crisis is a very good example of how to identify problems both spatially as well as temporally in terms of price rises, and how do you address that in the policy making process. And finally, we also have addressing specific policies and programs, monitoring. We used to call this adjustment programs, and that's when it started. Now we can actually apply that to agricultural transformation that's going on in many countries that are to some extent adjustment programs within these countries. There is a general methodology for those who are students here, and I'm kind of selling this topic for your PhD program because there's a lot of work to be done in this area. So there is a well-defined methodology that Cornell colleagues and others have developed, and it's basically assessing the situation, identifying the constraints in terms of nutrition, food security, analysis of the policy options, policy program prescriptions, and planning interventions and planning actions as well. Then comes the implementation. That is where the challenges are. And recently, the World Bank president called for creating a science called delivery science. And we are talking about that in Washington all the time. That basically relates to how implementation is happening. We go out and evaluate the programs at the end of the program or during the program, but rarely we do address the issues of implementation. In fact, if you read the impact evaluations and say program did not work, in the context of nutrition, in the context of final indicators that we want to look at, but did they really work to start with, the way in which we designed? Very little information on that. We don't even worry about it because we are interested in impact evaluation, right? But if you want to get a certain level of impact, you want to go back and look whether the program really worked the way it really has to work or ought to work. And that's something that we need to give emphasis in terms of research as well, evaluating the interventions and how do we improve. So it's a kind of a cyclical process. In all this, the use of knowledge, generating information, converting that into knowledge and using it in making decisions is very important. And that's where food and the various stages of implementing food security and nutrition comes in. This is again taken from about 20 years ago and still valid. If you reverse this in the context of general development, say for example, extension system, it is going back from researchers to farmers, and in nutritional surveillance, nutritional monitoring, we go from the data to policy making. So the process is the same. The organizations that are involved is very similar. So there is a stage that we go through, but strengthening the organizations are very important. We start with a conceptual framework, and I want to show that inputs into various programs and final program outcomes, and then you can identify indicators and causal factors which you want to really monitor. and evaluating the food security and nutrition program, which is pretty much what we did in this paper to look at in the context of food crisis. You have various indicators in this diagram that you can look at in the paper, that we use these indicators to see the nutrition monitoring systems are working well. Now, moving on, the food crisis came as a very timely to understand what is happening in the countries in terms of use of information for policy making. And we did consultative meetings in about 15 countries under the leadership of Joachim. We wanted to understand really what is happening in the policy processes like 5 years ago. And we had enough funding. And you will see the food security portal in IFPRI's website that brings communities of practice in the countries together. And we use that opportunities to look at what I'm reporting in this paper. And summary of policy responses. I don't want you to read this, but it is in the paper. It's a motivation for you. Again, characteristics of monitoring systems in various countries. Again, a motivation for you to look at in the paper. But important point is there is dichotomy in monitoring. Donors go and monitor, and they use that information for that purpose. Countries struggle to monitor, and they also struggle to use that information. This is FUSE network. You will be surprised the FUSE network data is not available for national policymakers, even in the countries where they collect. And we are opening up now. We requested a few years ago FUSE to give the data so that we can analyze the data. And it's improving once you make the request and the original data to see whether what we are recommending is true or not. Countries make their own bulletins with the information they collect. Ethiopia is a classic example. FUSE operating side by side with national monitoring system. How much do they talk? What is the status right now? Very limited information on the monitoring system from the countryside. And very few systems are functional. Quality of information is weak. It is not timely. And indicators, Anna will talk about that, is also a question. Decentralization of monitoring system. It's all at the national level. We don't have enough information at the decentralized level. There has been cycles of support and neglect of the monitoring systems. And one thing that we want to think about is how do we bridge this gap between this data collected and it is not analyzed, it's not even processed. It takes 3 years to get the data organized and the policy-making capacity. We do research, high-end research, and publish in journal articles, and there is data. In between, to work with the policymakers, there is little analysis. And that's where the gap is. And how do you build that capacity? Unless you build that capacity in nutritionists and sociologists and anthropologists, you are not going to translate that nutrition data into nutrition policy. We'll come back to that in a minute. And we did, this book is dedicated to PAIR. I wanted to show the cover of the book. It's going into the second edition now. But the bridging kind of capacity is in big demand. When we published this book, all the copies are sold. At the same time, the US universities are wanting to teach this course. Now, the second edition is coming out. And PAIR also encouraged us to do research on information systems. And there is a special issue which looked at it. And that research is kind of slowed down over the years. We have kind of neglected that. Just a plug-in for that. And I'm just going to go and conclude. There are some real lessons that are documented in the paper. Early warning systems, of all the types of systems, early warning systems have done the most useful information sharing with the policymakers, although they are still at the national level. They are driven primarily by donors. When the donor funding ends, that also suffers. And they are not mainstreamed, as I said. Data is not used by the policymakers. The capacity is very weak, and policies are continued to be made on ad hoc basis. And we need strategic investment. Where can we strengthen the national systems in order to meet the policy decision-making needs? And finally, we are talking about resilience of food systems. Next year, we are going to have 2020 conference on resilience of food systems that PAIR has started, these 2020 conferences. We cannot have resilient food systems unless we have strong institutional and individual capacities. Let's not forget that. And that requires, as we stand, multidisciplinary approach. We started with that. Cornell used to be, I think it is still one of the best multidisciplinary places for nutrition economics policy coming together. It is not anymore. I would like to see in a nutrition task force or food security task force in the president's office, people saying, I have nutrition economics PhD from Cornell. That will shake things up. We have not had that strong emphasis on economics and nutrition. Agricultural agronomists became effective in policy making because we had agricultural economics as a separate field. Nutritionists are still struggling. Let's tear that wall, as we say. Give PhDs in nutrition economics, let them go and handle the nutrition policy. Thank you.